Hey there, it's Tito here, Jeff Thitoff with the Buckeye Blitz on Fanstream Sports, powered by DSP Media. Follow me on the X at ThatHappens. And also download the free app. It's free for Apple and Android users both. The Fanstream Sports app. Check out all of around the clock program we have, always adding new shows, lots of great content out there. So download the free app. Go to fanstreamsports.com. We got a Facebook page as well. Interact with some of the hosts and other fans of our shows. Lots going on in the Fanstream Sports world. All right, Ohio State defeat Northwestern 31-7 at Wrigley Field, and I would give the performance for Ohio State probably a B+. They started off slowly, and it's been a bit of concern for Ohio State's defense, which I think, and somebody said this to me yesterday, that they think Ohio State's has the most non-dominant dominant defense they've ever seen. And I get what that person was saying, because Ohio State, early on, Northwestern had a big drive to start the game, lost on a turnover. Northwestern had a great game plan, by the way, for taking on Ohio State. They were going to try to keep the ball for as long as they could, as far as snapping the ball late in the play clock, and trying to run the ball quite a bit, keep the ball moving, keep the clock moving, and limit Ohio State's offensive possessions. They did a great job of that. They just turned it over. A great game plan, just didn't execute it perfectly because of their turnovers and mistakes, the blocked punt and whatnot. They had a couple other mistakes here and there. But nonetheless, speaking of Ohio State's defense, that was kind of my concern, as Northwestern had two long drives early in the game to start it. And the same thing happened against Marshall. The same thing happened in other games this year. Nebraska had success moving the ball. And so that's my concern with Ohio State's defense, is getting off to a slow start against a quality opponent. And they have got Indiana coming up. We'll talk about that. And then Michigan, and then hopefully Oregon in the Big Ten championship game before they get to the playoffs. But so that's a bit of a concern of mine, is that Ohio State needs to start stronger on defense. Now, they do make adjustments, which is great, because Ohio State, although I don't think they dominated Northwestern, it felt to me like if you're an older brother and you've got a younger brother, and where you could just pummel him if you're wrestling with him and playing around, instead, you just knock him down and sit on his head so he can't get up, or just lay up so he can't move anywhere until he gets mad enough and gets tired and all. That's all it was. Ohio State was the big brother in this one, and they just wore Northwestern down. That's what they did. Ohio State early on did not run the ball tremendously, but as the game wore on, they did. Big plays again on offense. That was great. Another big special teams play, which was nice. It was none of the doing of Ohio State. Northwestern botched the snap, and that's what led to Ohio State blocking the punt and getting the ball deep and getting a touchdown there. But nonetheless, Northwestern early on looked very competent and had a good game plan to beat Ohio State. The Buckeyes, though, found a way to overcome that, and they ended up, when they got going, and that's the thing Ohio State does, is a team like Northwestern, again, perfect game plan, started off really well for them. Couple long drives, a touchdown, the lead, all of that was great. Once Ohio State took over, though, and took control, it turned into a situation where Northwestern had to change their game plan and force them out of what they were doing, because they're all of a sudden behind and need to find a way to get back into the game, which, instead of running the ball, they now have time against them. They've got to throw the ball more, causes more issues. They get into situations where it's definite passing downs. Ohio State brings the house on defense and forces Northwestern out of their comfort zone. That same thing Ohio State did against Marshall. Same thing against Akron. Same thing against Penn State. And that's what they do. That's the strength of Ohio State and why they do that. So the defense statistically looks great. They're not allowing a lot of points. The only team that has scored more than 14 points against Ohio State is Oregon. That's the only one. Everyone else has been under 14 points or less against Ohio State. So the Buckeyes get the win. Another great game by Will Howard. It's interesting to me that the biggest difference for me between Will Howard and Kyle McCord from last year is, when Kyle McCord was playing, I felt like there would be at least one interception by him every game. Like, I just anticipated that, expected it. With Ohio State now with Will Howard, I'm surprised if he makes a bad read and throws a pick. That surprises me now. He's got 2 straight games. Granted, inferior opponents, Purdue and Northwestern, without an interception, which is great. But I don't expect turnovers out of Will Howard. I did with Kyle McCord there. So big difference there on that. Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson ran the ball well. They got, like I say, they moved the ball well and wore down this Northwestern defense. Jeremiah Smith, another good game for him. The Jeremiah Smith, he got hurt, and on the sidelines then, they taped up his ankle, iced it for a little bit, taped it up. He went back out there and played. Not sure why he did. I was surprised that Jeremiah Smith went back into the game after the injury. Northwestern defensive player, by the way, should get suspended for trying. It looked like he tried to injure Jeremiah Smith. So I was surprised he went back in the game because my thought was, well, you don't need Jeremiah Smith to win this game against Northwestern in the second half. You do need him for Indiana and Michigan. So Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate also coming home to Chicago, lots of family and friends in the stands, and scored 2 touchdowns. His mother was murdered in Chicago, and that happened like a year ago it was. But nice to see Carnell Tate have probably the best game of his Ohio State career and do that. Carnell Tate's a guy on Ohio State. He's the 3rd receiver you mentioned. He's the 6th offensive player you mentioned. You always say Ohio State receivers. Okay, yeah, Jeremiah Smith, Mecca Ibuka, and Carnell Tate. Offense, yeah, you got Will Howard, they got Judkins, they got Henderson, they got Jeremiah Smith, they've got Ibuka. And they've also got Carnell Tate. Carnell Tate, for many teams in the country, would be their bona fide number 1 receiver. So, scored a couple of touchdowns, made a couple of great catches too, and I loved watching him play. So good for Carnell Tate to get that going. Defensively, Sonny Styles was awesome. Cody Simon was great again. The defense, I like the way they schematically are attacking the offenses and the way they are. They're bringing lots of pressure, and the adjustments they're making. Northwestern, like I said, had a really good game plan coming in, executed it well, other than the turnover on their first drive, and then scored the touchdown on the long drive later on. It's just that Ohio State makes adjustments, though. It made Northwestern uncomfortable, and that's what Ohio State does. Now, coming up, another top 5 matchup for Ohio State. They play Indiana. We'll get the college football rankings on Tuesday, but Ohio State and Indiana will both be in the top 5, I would have to imagine. At the worst, Indiana's going to be 6th, but I think they're all coming off a bye week after beating Michigan. And so I think it'll be a top 5 matchup for sure, though, between these 2 teams. At Columbus, Ohio State opened as a 10.5-point favorite, moved to 11. I think it'll be 12 by the time the game starts, but it's a big game for both teams, obviously. Indiana, it's funny because in the national media, the narrative has been Indiana just needs to be respectable, needs to keep it close. No one's talking about undefeated Indiana winning this game. All they're saying is Indiana, and Kurt Signetti got his new contract as Indiana head coach, much deserved, but that Indiana just can't get blown out. That's what the narrative is, which is interesting to me when you've got an undefeated Indiana team coming in to a 1-loss Ohio State team's house this late in the season. And Ohio State's an 11-point favorite. People are saying, hey, look, the undefeated team, the 10-0 team coming in, just has to keep it close. That speaks volumes to the schedule Indiana's played so far. So, that game is this week for Ohio State. By the way, I heard this stat also. Ohio State could end up playing 7 more games right now. Indiana, Michigan, potentially Big Ten championship, that's 3. If they don't get a bye and they keep winning in the playoff, the championship game will be the 7th game. It's so weird for me to think that on November 17th, which is when I'm recording this, Ohio State still could have 7 games left in their season. So, Ohio State, Indiana this week. We'll see what happens in that one. College football rankings come out on Tuesday. And the Big Ten should, again, have probably 4 of the top 5 or 4 of the top 6 teams in there. There's no conference in college football that has a better top 4 than the Big Ten does. So we'll keep an eye on that with the rankings. Ohio State, Indiana, we'll preview it later on in the week. But everything is pushing towards Ohio State. Look, they already gave Penn State their first loss of the season. They give Indiana the first loss of the season. And hopefully, down the road, they'll give Oregon their first loss of the season in the Big Ten Championship. So we'll see about that. The game at Wrigley Field, again, Buckeye Nation invaded that. A lot of Buckeye fans for that one. It was probably an 80-20 split from everything I saw and heard from other fans that were there. But the Buckeyes have a noon kickoff on Saturday against Indiana. We'll preview it more, go more in depth after Ryan Day's press conference this week. He's got his normal appearance on 97.1 The Fan in Columbus on Monday night. And he'll be a press conference on Tuesday. He'll talk to the media as well. We'll get more information, hopefully, on Jeremiah Smith and any other injury updates with this Buckeye team. But this has been the Buckeye Blitz. I'm Tito, Jeff Thitoff. Follow me on the X at It Happens. Go download that Fanstream Sports app. It's free. Apple and Android users, go check it out. Download it. So many great shows we have going on right now. It's only getting better. Folks, this is the heart of college football season now. I'm excited about it. Hope you are as well. I'll talk to you next time. Again, Buckeye Blitz. I'm Jeff Thitoff at It Happens.